Good evening. Welcome to the City of Topeka Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and a city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, and to make recommendations to the city council on planning items. Please note that the city council rules state that the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the planning commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the city council. Tonight's case is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city council next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. For cases that require public hearings, the procedures will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or their representatives. Then we will receive public testimony. Public comments should be addressed solely to the chair and are limited to 4 minutes, please. Chris, please take the roll.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Mr. Freed?
Here.
Mr. Haw?
Here.
Ms. Jordan is absent. Mr. Kanar?
Here.
Ms. Lawson?
Here.
Ms. Messina is absent. Ms. Ringler?
Here.
And Mr. Warner.
Here.
We have 7 and a quorum.
First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our January 22nd meeting. Has anybody seen any corrections or comments that need to be recorded? Hearing none, I take a motion for approval.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Minutes have been motion for approval. And second, Chris?
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. Kanar?
Aye.
Mr. Haw?
Aye.
Mr. Freed?
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest or ex parte communications for tonight? None that I know of either. So we will move on to the first item under the public hearings, CU 1801 by Topeka Shawnee County Public Library. Mr. Nunaville?
Yes, Commissioners, good evening. CU 1801 is indeed an application from the City of Topeka and Shawnee County Library for a proposed conditional use permit designating and partially reconstructing an off-site parking lot to be located at the southwest corner of Southwest 10th Avenue and Southwest Garfield Avenue for use primarily by library employees. The subject site includes a portion of an existing parking lot previously used for the recently demolished Medical Plaza building that was located at 1001 Southwest Garfield Avenue. The Medical Plaza building was constructed in 1964 pursuant to a rezoning of the property from residential to commercial as occurred in 1962. Special use permits were approved during the 1970s for expansion of the Medical Plaza parking area within a residential zoning district. Because the parking serves as a primary use not located on the same zoning lot, it is an off-site accessory parking lot subject to specific use requirements in the city's zoning code. One of these requirements stipulate that the parking lot shall be of the same zoning classification as that of the primary use or be sited in a less restrictive district. The parking lot does not meet this requirement, therefore a conditional use permit is required. Subject site is zoned C2 commercial for that portion within approximately 100 feet of Southwest 10th Avenue, with the remainder southerly portion of the site zoned M1 two-family dwelling district. There is a commercial hearing aid clinic on a small parcel immediately adjacent to the site at the northeast corner of 10th and Mulvane Street. A single-family residence is located to the south of the site on Mulvane Street, and there is a multifamily apartment building also to the south that fronts onto Garfield Avenue. Much more intensive uses, primarily medical office, is located to the north on the other side of 10th Avenue. The subject parking lot is not required for off-street parking for the library per se, since the library's primary parking area east of Garfield Avenue and immediately adjacent to the library provides all required off-street parking. The use of the subject parking lot, therefore, is intended primarily for library employees and as such is accurately categorized as supplemental parking and not required parking. The new supplemental parking lot will provide a total of 91 additional parking spaces for the library. This exhibit actually, I think, illustrates well, it's actually the landscape plan, but the area in red is that portion of the site that will actually be changed. That was the location of the Medical Plaza office building. And the remainder of the portion outside of that red area, the red bordered area, will remain essentially intact, although there will be additional landscaping there added pursuant to the city's current requirements. Actually, the landscaping does exceed the city's current requirements in that landscape buffer areas generally exceed the 4-foot setback normally required, with much of the buffer area adjacent to 10th Avenue being a minimum 10 feet wide, and the buffer adjacent to Garfield Avenue being a minimum 5 feet wide. The buffer adjacent to 10th Street will also include, in addition to landscape plantings, a 12 to 18-inch earthen and landscape berm to further screen the parking lot. Staff has identified the need to further enhance the residential screening buffer adjacent to the single-family residence to the south, and the CUP has been so conditioned. In regard to the location of the landscape buffer, the city's Public Works Department is approving the inclusion of this buffer adjacent to 10th Avenue within a utility easement, and that's kind of unusual. That generally is not allowed, but it is being approved in this case due to the substantial utilities such as sewer or water lines not being located within that particular easement. In regard to parking too, just to briefly touch back on that, staff had originally recommended a condition in regard to providing needed accessible parking for persons with disabilities. However, the applicant did provide additional information documenting that such parking spaces are not required in this location. They are in the primary parking lot of the library as appropriate. So staff is recommending deletion of that actual condition. In regard to adjacent public facilities, Southwest 10th Avenue is classified as a minor arterial, while both Southwest Garfield and Southwest Mulvane are local streets. The CUP site plan includes an increased public right-of-way adjacent to Southwest 10th Avenue, as is also being reflected in a replat currently in process, which will enable future roadway improvements to be completed to 10th Avenue. As also included on the CUP site plan, an existing north-south alleyway segment between 10th Avenue and 11th Street will be vacated and closed within the subject parking lot with an access easement to Southwest Mulvane Street maintained to ensure access to and from the alleyway that will remain open to the south to serve residential development. The applicant did conduct a neighborhood information meeting as required on December 20th. The one invitee who attended the meeting owns a medical office building on the fourth side of 10th Avenue. This property owner sought information regarding the project and stated he had no concerns. As with all CUPs, staff did complete analysis of the proposed CUP in accordance with guidelines in the city zoning code in regard to land use compatibility, site development, operating characteristics, and consistency with the comprehensive plan. In particular, inasmuch as the existing parking lot has been located within an area without negative effects for some time, it has been demonstrated that the partial reconstruction of a new parking lot in which a primary change is merely the designated user owner would not detrimentally affect nearby properties. Based upon the findings and analysis in the staff report, staff is recommending approval of the proposed conditional use permit, subject to conditions in the staff report, with the deletion of condition number 4 related, as I had mentioned, to handicapped accessible parking, since such parking has been documented as no longer being required or desirable in this location. And this concludes staff's presentation.
So, excuse me, just so I'm understanding, condition number 4 is deleted. That's your recommendation anyway.
Yes.
And I had a question about condition number 3 having to do with the landscape plan. Has the landscape plan been submitted, or is this just a condition to make sure that the typography and the notes are correct?
Yes, generally, and also there is a concern, there is an existing single-family residence that currently does not have, unlike the apartment to the east, the apartment building, there is a screening fence, for example. There are options for providing either landscaping and/or a screening fence, and that will just need to be looked at more closely at the site development plan, the site plan development review
So there's
process.
still a little bit more development that needs to be done.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Are there any questions from the commission?
I have a question on the handicap parking. So is it because total number of spaces, when you add them together, it's covered?
Yes, Commissioner Freed, they actually have accessible parking spaces in excess of what they really need based upon the library's overall parking requirements. And those are located, again, as you would expect, normally adjacent immediately to the library entrance. And although we were looking at this parking lot as kind of a standalone parking lot, of course, and every parking lot theoretically has to provide accessible parking.
But this parking lot's primarily for employees?
Yes, that's
But
correct.
employees who need to have that are able to use the handicap access at the main parking lot?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yes, Mr. Nunavell. So the mid-block alley access point is being closed as a part of this as well?
That's correct. And actually, the traffic engineer was very pleased about that aspect of this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I imagine so.
Yes, Mr. Nunaville, when is or how long had the building been vacant that was demolished? I'm just going down our factors, and our lot is just recently vacant. The building was demolished. How long was that building vacant?
You know, Commissioner, I am not certain of that. I believe it was less than a year or thereabouts, but I'm not certain of that. Perhaps the applicant would have that information.
Okay. And where are the employees parking now?
In the library's primary parking lot area, away from, I understand, away from the entrance more so, more remote location.
Okay. So looking at our 11th factor, this would actually reduce pedestrian crossing of the street during regular hours because the non-employees would be actually able to park in the lot and not parking on the street.
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? I'm going to ask the applicant or their representative to come forward. Please be sure to state your name for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mark Boyd. I'm with SBB Engineering, and we're here on behalf of the library. We're good with the recommendations, Commission, recommendations from the staff, the remaining recommendations. Might touch on a couple of things about the handicap parking. Handicap parking has a sliding scale for the number of stalls that you have. So when you add up all the parking, the library actually has 2 lots south of 11th Street, and including the one that we're rebuilding now, plus with their primary parking, comes up to right at just under 500 stalls. And the scale for ADA parking at that point is 9 stalls, and they actually have 14, 12 at the main library entrance and 2 on the west side of the library. So they're beyond what they need for accessibility. As far as the alley goes, being cut off, part of that plat and part of the conditional use permit is also providing an access to the west to Mulvane for the remaining of the public alley. And I guess as far as the landscaping goes, I guess we have further discussion on that because I'm not sure what that comment's about either, about being compliant to the residential. I thought we provided what was necessary, but, so, I guess we'll need further discussion on that, just for clarification on our part. Okay? I have nothing else to add, and the library representatives here, if you have any questions for them.
Any
I
questions?
have one question.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that about, so the existing alley then would use your parking lot as access
Yeah.
out to the west?
Yeah, there's a public access being dedicated, and at the south end of the property where we vacate the alley, that easement connects to it, and it'll be just a direct connection to the entrance out on the Mulvane. It's, I didn't realize how common it was in town until just recently, but I guess there's several of these in place where alleys have been vacated.
Thank you.
I have a question. I noticed there's a 12.5-foot right-of-way dedication on the east half, and that looks like it continues over on the west half. Is that correct?
Correct.
But then are those parking spaces going to be in the right-of-way?
They are, until something happens.
Okay.
This is an interesting case to me because you think a parking lot, continuing to be a parking lot would be an easy matter, but, it opened up a lot of questions about how this thing was going to get used. And, I thank John and the staff for working through it with us, because there was a few meetings involved in this thing trying to figure out what all is going to be necessary to get it to where it's at. And one of those that came out of that was the additional right-of-way dedication for that 10th Street corridor. It causes a few issues. There's going to be some parking stalls out there until something happens. There's a piece of a building that's the very northeast corner of that existing building is going to be in the public right-of-way. I think that's one of those issues where the owner needs to work through with that building owner to make them aware that this has happened through this action. But it's going to exist until, and I guess this was through engineering and traffic engineering that they felt comfortable that everything was going to be okay until something happened later on with the parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
There are questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
At this time, we will open it up for public comment. Or is there anyone who would like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any further discussion? I don't really have any concerns or questions. Okay. Does anyone have a motion?
I would make a motion for approval of the 3 conditions that are recommended.
Okay, so there's been a motion with the 3 recommended conditions by staff. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, Mr. Hall. Chris, there's been a motion, and a second. Will you take the vote, please?
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Mr. Freed?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Canar?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 with none abstaining.
Okay. The other item we had tonight has been deferred, is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes, if I can just read in case anybody was here for that or watching for that. Z18-01 by McGee, Jeremy, and Angel requesting to amend the zoning district for the subject property located at 2029 Southwest Topeka Boulevard from C2 Commercial, that's northwest, isn't it? Northwest Topeka. All right, located at 2029 Northwest Topeka Boulevard from C2 Commercial to C3 Commercial District to provide for retail auto sales. That is deferred till next month, March 19th, due to a notification error. Thank you.
The other action item we have on the agenda tonight, 2019 to 2023 CIP. Mr. Warner?
Commissioners, you've been presented with the city's proposed CIP program for your approval as required by city and state law. Just a little background here, KSA, which is Kansas Statute 12748, essentially states that the Topeka Planning Commission shall review the city's capital improvement program to ensure that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then you are to forward a recommendation that the CIP is consistent with the comprehensive plan to the governing body. Staff has reviewed the CIP and has determined that it is indeed consistent with the comprehensive plan. There are a number of highlighted projects that are attached to the memo, along with the CIP itself and project descriptions for each one of those projects. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the projects. The city's finance department is here as well. They are generally responsible for putting that document together. So with that, commissioners, be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. And I believe this is probably going to be directed for the budget people. Just a quick review as I was going through the spreadsheets. The front spreadsheet doesn't reconcile. In particular, I'm looking at the highlighted yellow section, 2/3 of the way down the page, and there's at least 8 items that don't justify left or rectify left or right, and I'm not sure, there's just appear to be numbers missing. I'm not sure where they are.
Okay, yes, good evening, my name is Nick Hawkins, I'm the Budget and Performance Manager. We just recognized this issue on the printout, and we've gone to a new system. The totals on the right hand side should be correct, and also in the individual sheets. We've gone to a new system, and that somehow just messed up on the summary sheet. So we're looking at our Excel file and matching it to this, and it's the totals all the way to the right are correct, and then the individual project sheets should be correct. We're working on that right now. We can go print out a clean copy of that. But it's.
Well, I mean, the principal thing is the numbers on the right are correct. They just don't necessarily, we don't see all the information on the left
Yes.
that tallies to that.
But if you would like an updated summary sheet, we can provide that.
Mr. Reed?
Yeah.
I'm not needing to see that, but I don't even think the right totals, the right column justifies either. I was just looking at the Tyler Street, Lyman to Beverly. It has a total of 2-point-some million on its individual project sheet and 800 and some thousand on the right-hand column, so I think there's more errors than.
Commissioner Armstrong, that project does go out beyond the 5-year horizon that you see on the summary sheet on the first page. So there 2024, 2025 you would not see on this first page, but would go into the 5-year, well, it says 5-year total. It's actually the project total, I believe.
But down below, project schedule, year 2022 itself has 1.6 million, which seems to be more than the 800,000 shown on the first spreadsheet.
We will we'll update that. I believe the project sheets themselves should be correct, and what should have been happening was those should have gone to the summary page. I think
They seem to make sense to me as I was looking through them.
Anyone else have questions, observations? I agree with staff that at least the descriptions of the projects seem appear to comply with the plan. Is there any discussion, questions?
Depending on people's comfort level, the issue on the numbers here, I don't know if it's an appropriate delay, what effect that has if we're delaying it. If we're comfortable that the individual sheets are accurate, whether we want to come back in a month and do this again or not, or, what the comfort level is there. What would the delay really be in terms of, other than the city council seeing it a month later?
Commissioner Kinar, we would recommend, yes, you're right, the individual project sheets are correct. The summary sheet would need to be updated. What you're charged with looking at isn't so much the total amount is correct, or even to debate necessarily the project amount or the year, or even the year it might be in, although that is all documented on the individual sheets correctly. I don't see the need to, unless there's a project that seems out of place with the comprehensive plan, or you have a question about one of the projects, the cost itself is probably not something we were expecting you to weigh in on necessarily. Great catches, absolutely, but debating the pros and cons of the amounts, we weren't thinking you were going to needed to weigh in that deep on it, because that's honestly just, yeah, your scope is more, does this project fit and comply with the plans that have been adopted by this body, and which is what you're charged with. So.
And pardon me, and the city council knows that all we're doing is voting on that this plan is consistent with the master plan, and we're not voting on the numbers.
Correct, Commissioner Freed. So what our folks in the audience will do is go back and, before it is presented to city council, we'll make sure the summary pages reflect the individual pages, and those are all nailed down. And you don't vouch for the price tag yet.
Okay, that does make me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments or observations? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve this comprehensive plan, or I'm sorry, this
Capital improvement program?
yes, that we approve the capital improvement program, and that it is in compliance with the long-range plan.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the CIP. Chris, did you take that up?
Mr. Warner, excuse me, Mr. Warner,
Aye.
Ms. Ringler,
Aye.
Ms. Lawson,
Aye.
Mr. Kinar,
Aye.
Mr. Hall,
Aye.
Mr. Freed,
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Last item on our agenda is a communication to the commission about the Clinton Heights Steel Neighborhood Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have a communication on that and one other. Clinton Heights Steel Neighborhood Plan was supposed to be this month. You heard a preview of it last month. It was delayed another month to really at the neighborhood's doing to help make sure that we have an approved plan from the neighborhood, and then B, that we do have a understanding of what the implementation budget will look like. So working through that, in particular, some of the park projects. So you will see that next month. So unless there's any questions on that, one more. We are pleased to announce that our VAS, our Visual Appeal Survey, will be closing tomorrow. And we achieved over 1,000 responses. We're up to 1,027
Nice.
in real time. So thank you for everything of what you may have had a hand in getting that around out to the public. It's been very successful to date. We haven't talked too much about the sign and building design update. So next steps on that is we'll close the survey, we'll do the analysis, probably get something on your agenda next month just to update you on that, what we found in the survey. I think you'd find that very helpful. We will schedule some meetings with our technical committee, some of you are on, to go over that and really start to look at how that affects the draft, that really start to begin reviewing a draft and using that survey to help shape that. So we'll come back next month with you all, update you, and also begin talking about planning for maybe a work session or two on this. I don't see us getting into the weeds too much next month, but maybe once the technical committees have blessed it enough that it can come back to you for more of a work session and start also talking about public engagement. Maybe we can talk about that next month, just kind of how that fits. Whether you want to have that here, with you present, have it be something separate with the public, be thinking about that. So that's my update on where that is. Any questions on that project? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Any objections? Nope. We are adjourned.